Teachers, what's the darkest thing you've seen from a student? Please consider subscribing if you enjoy the video. I taught welding and metal sculpture at the high school level for a year. One morning, one of my students, a quiet, awkward, but really nice young man, came into class and asked me for a band-aid. I asked him what for and he replied that it was for a burn. Class hadn't started yet for the day. He showed me and it was a fresh second-degree burn that was already blistering. It was in the shape of an A. Some kids, if I'm going to be honest, they were bottom performers and troublemakers, from a different class of mine had swiped a small metal letter A from one of my supply bins, heated it with a lighter, and then branded this kid on the morning school bus. He had let the kids do it, because he really wanted to fit in. He didn't have many friends and these kids had seemed cool, because they were always acting out. As a mandatory reporter, I reported it. The police got involved. Other than that, I have no idea what else happened. Jesus, that poor kid. The worst thing is the kid did not realize until I explained to him that he will have that scar for the rest of his life. He got really quiet when I showed him the welding scars on my arms. I hate to ask, but where was it? On his arm? I am an English teacher and I am the sponsor of the school's comic book and anime club. This year, I managed to take my club to a convention, and many of them had several firsts, such as meeting celebrities, LARPing, participating in panels, speaking to professional artists, and just being with a larger fandom community. Upon our return, one of my members, a 16-year-old girl, asked to speak to me privately. She proceeded to tell me that she had been molested by her father and uncle ever since she was 12. On her 16th birthday, she finally had enough of the abuse and she contacted the police and told them everything. Before the investigation could begin, her uncle committed suicide out of shame. Her father was about to do the same, but she was able to convince him not to do it. He is now facing trial for his crimes. She then thanked me, and said that the 2 days we spent at the convention were the happiest days of her life, and it allowed her to feel like a child for the first time in 4 years. It was the proudest moment of my career. First paragraph made me forget what was inevitably coming in the second paragraph. In elementary school we had a kid with a severe peanut allergy and a teacher caught some kids rubbing peanut butter on the opening of his water bottle. We also had a kid who could describe in detail about how to prepare heroin. For some reason the peanut butter story bothered me more than the little heroin chemist. Intentional harm, knowing it would seriously harm, kill the kid versus a kid who possibly had too much time on their hands and free roam access to Google. I'm a teacher. A student saw one of my former co-teachers at some point with his wife and thought she was hot, and my co-teacher took advantage of this to get the student to secretly record his sister taking showers and shit. He offered videos of his wife performing sexual acts on with him to the student in exchange. He finally got caught when the student blackmailed the teacher into trying to get the wife to frick him, and when he proposed it to his wife, she called the cops. Imagine being so far gone that you ask your wife, "Hey, wanna sleep with this kid?" I've been sending him videos of us in return for pics of his sister, and expecting it to go somewhat okay. Being a manipulative frick, I am assuming he tried implanting the idea without success, escalating to the point where he said, "Frick this kid or my life is over." And her response was, "Your life is over anyway." I feel so sorry for her. Imagine finding out your partner was peddling peanut. I had a kid who really wanted his parents to come to his graduation ceremony, but they were both sex offenders and couldn't be on campus. He just wanted someone there to support him. A former student of mine was always the quiet one in class. Taught them for 4 years and I spent a large amount of time trying to get them to open up and contribute to class as their written work was exceptional. 7 years after graduation they emailed to apologize for being quiet and that they didn't want me to think they were stuck up. They were being frequently raped by a family member the whole time and were too afraid to speak out. Absolutely broke me. That's so messed up. I hope both the kid and you are doing better now. Thank you. They are in a much better place now. Safe. Moving on and healing. Holy shit. That's horrible. Our school had a selective mute kid that graduated last year. Kids were calling him Fish Boy. It turns out he was buying fish and killing them in various ways on Instagram based on people's requests in the comments. LOL as I was reading. Fish Boy. Weird way to bully someone for being mute. Oh, he wasn't being bullied. Red rooms do exist. What the frick? He needs help. The Instagram requesters also do. I've got two. I had a student casually tell me about how he pulled the eyes out of his rabbit's head. He explained how there was blood everywhere. This was my first day working as a supply teacher at that school, and my first conversation with a student. I later brought it up to support staff and they were shocked he mentioned it to me. Apparently he killed his rabbit because his mum loved it more than she loved him. The boy was now in foster care, as his mother was a drug addict. He shared a lot of really dark stuff with me that day. Another one, more sad than dark, was at a different school. Students had to write their address for an assignment, but this 4th grade girl didn't know hers. Another student asked me, "Do you know where the so-and-so motel is? She lives there." Really broke my heart, as this girl was so young and innocent, and didn't really understand how unfortunate her living situation was, as she proudly googled the motel and found her address. Really low-income part of town. Have you kept in touch with that first student? Just, wow. A list simply entitled "The List with a few students' names and my co-teacher's name on it" was a student with some serious behavioral disabilities on it who admitted it was a kill list. Well, hey, at least this means you were the fun teacher. Jesus, this list is AWH. He likes me enough to not murder me. As a 6th grader, I was on a list like this. The boy was known for his odd behavior and spontaneous meltdowns in school, so I took it seriously when a friend told me about it. I reported it to counseling with my dad and they told me he would get the help he needed, and ever since the meltdown stories have ceased and now he seems like any other, if not loud, student. There was kid in my wife's class that squeezed the classroom hamster to death. He just wanted to tend the rabbits. Better stay away from women too then. Curly can attest to that. What happened after? How did your wife handle it? Girl was going through a lot. Unprompted told me that her older brother died in Iraq recently and that was why she was having such a rough time. I tell all her teachers so they know it's a thing to be aware of. I'm super nice with her and supportive. Eventually I tell the counselor and he calls home to ask if the family needs anything. Turns out she has never had a brother. My sister did that too around the same age. Told kids at school our dad was not her real dad, but that her real father died in Vietnam. I don't think my dad ever got over that one. It was just a precursor of more lies to come. It is like a weird junior take on stolen valor. I have also known children who sold others on losing a loved one in the line of some kind of duty. I think for different reasons and to different degrees. I guess it's a thing. Strange. I did this when I was 3 at daycare. My dad had just started traveling a lot for work and someone must have asked where he was. I said he was dead. My mother was mortified when she picked me up and I went to a child psychologist for a month. Turns out 3-year-old me just wasn't grasping that dad wasn't dead, he was just in Topeka, Kansas. Pretty much the same thing. I teach an algebra class and I was explaining how, in our city at least, your address tells you how far you are from the central streets like a Cartesian coordinate system. The girl, who happens to be my daughter's friend, volunteered to let me graph her address. 3 months later a boy got expelled for threatening to shoot up the school. He had her address and written threats to kidnap her from her house. He got the address from that class. Answering questions from thread. I do not blame myself for the actions of crazy people. He could have found info several other ways. I put my address up first and my daughter's friend wanted to use hers so that they could know the distance between their houses. Was the point of the exercise. Kid has 0.0% chance of kidnapping her. I know her family well. The fact that you specified Cartesian made me imagine a hellish city design which gave everywhere a name based on the polar coordinates of the place. Using the city center as a center. Washington DC kind of has this. They have radial streets. It's quite worse. In DC we have both a grid and radial streets overlaid on one another. Indianapolis was designed by the edited to add assistant city planner for DC. He did the same thing there. It's terrible, but the coordinate system does work. The address is based on distance from city center. That is 126th Street is 12.6 miles from Monument Circle, the center point of the city. I had a 3rd grader tell me in excruciating detail about every time that he's been removed from a home, starting with how he was taken from his mother at 2, because they found drugs in his crib. In his crib. Imagine the toughest, baddest little dude you can and multiply the attitude by 100. He wrote me a note at the end of the year saying that I was a great teacher, because he knew I loved him even when he was bad. It has been and will always be the best note I ever get from a student. In that same class, I had a little boy try to cut his wrists with scissors, saying that he didn't want to be here anymore. Cops came to interview him and said they were just kid scissors, so it wasn't a big deal. Thankfully, Mum took it seriously and got him the help he needed. You are obviously an excellent educator. My wife had a very similar experience with a lost little boy who, despite his behavior, came to know that she cared about him no matter what. That connection, that relationship with a stable adult who shows unconditional caring, can be a lifeline to a child whose home life is a mess. Those cops are dumb. The intent should be what matters, not the weapon. I completely agree. Kid seemed down and I asked him to please tell me what was wrong. Not today, but when you're ready. I was his last class of the day and he promised he would. End of the year comes and he told me his brother killed himself. He said he thought about the same many times, but always remembered that he had made me a promise. I made him promise to call me if he ever thought he might again, and he promised me again. He's doing amazingly well and is about to graduate from college, doing amazing work. Recently lost a best friend to mental illness and makes a world of difference having someone like you in their social network. Thanks for watching and subscribe for more r/AskReddit content. Be sure to check out our playlist, link in the description below.